Hey guys, Kara50 here with another review. This time I'll be reviewing the deluxe Astro Switch Kaban from Conrad Forza. This is a special briefcase that can be used to store Astro Switches, as well as can communicate with Forza via his radar module, and can change the modes of the power dials remotely. So the set includes two things, the Astro Switch Kaban and one Astro Switch. So here's the Kaban. It's this nice, solid, rectangular block. It is a suitcase. The primary thing is this nice, smooth, dark gray plastic, but there's also these portions on the sides, on the corners, that are more of a matte, dark gray plastic. Got some edges and detailing. It's all very smooth. Has some little kind of sprockets or fake screws on each of these corners. In the middle here we have the Forza symbol, and also the symbol of which is also the symbol of the Conrad Club of Amagawa High School. For those who don't know about that, the Conrad Club is an organization made up by 7 members of, well, currently 8 members of Amagawa High School, which is the main setting of Forza, including the person who becomes Forza. And originally, the Astro Switch Kaban was just blank, but in episode 13, after all seven of the first members were formed into the Conrad Club, this sticker was applied to the Kaban to show that it belongs to the club. So up top we have the hinges, well, the latches that keep it closed, the handle, which is also matte plastic like the corner bumps. Got the bottom with some couple of these 4 little stubs to rest down upright. Then you have the back, which is very detailed. You get with a circle, cross, triangle, and square. The same 4 shapes that are on Forza, in the same positions, correlating to his limbs. Got lots of these little bits of kind of circuitry and cybernetic detailing and all this nice molded detail. And it all looks very nice. And you've got this circular part in the middle, which has its own latch that I'll go over later. And that's it for it on the outside, but before we get too far into it, let's take a look at the switch. This is number 16, the winch switch. This is a square switch with a light green color. You got the sticker here with a hook on it and the number 16. And to activate, you pull up like so, and push it back in. This is the first pull switch since the parachute switch, and while it's similar, the switch is more horizontal facing than it's basically horizontal facing rather than vertical facing like the parachute switch was. Also has a molded arrow pointing up, but pretty easy. But if you've seen the show or just read the instructions, you'll know that to activate, you pull up. And, of course, since this is an Astro Switch, I'm going to bring in the Forza driver and take a look at what sounds it makes. So, starting up the transformation, but first moving the camera down. So, since this is a square switch, we'll take out radar, then place in winch, then switch it on. This equips Forza with the winch module, attaching a winch or tow cable to Forza's left arm. And that sound is the same sound of the hammer switch and the medical switch, but chronologically this is the first switch to make that sound. It is rather unfortunate that even a couple of switches with deluxe, deluxe actual toy line releases share the same sound. But that's just something that we'll have to deal. But that's just something to deal with because the sounds can't be changed, and different sounds can have different context. So we're removing that, pressing back in radar. And switching off. We'll come back to looking at the Kaban. Now, just to get out of the way, Kaban is simply the Japanese word for bag, but since this is a briefcase, well, I guess it's just easier to use the word for bag than, like, briefcase or suitcase or something like that. So anyway, now that we've seen the outside, let's take a look at the inside. So, just unlatch these two right here, then open up like so. And here we have the inside. First up is this display screen. This is all a big sticker, but it is a pretty nice display all on its own. So, actually this is something that's hard to show up close because of the bottom parts right down here. But I can basically give you an overview of what all this is. So, first up, here, and here are diagrams of the power geyser in geyser mode, vehicle mode, and tower mode. We also got a keyboard that has the same setup as your typical American keyboard, including the F number keys up here, as well as the arrow keys. You've got this section here which says sound wave from chart survey, which I don't really know what that is. You also have this section which is radar module signal strength, which is how well this can communicate with Force's radar module. Also have a number pad with a call button, as well as two buttons saying send, as in send text mail, or a voicemail button. It's all very nice and does kind of at least supplant the other things that this is supposed to do besides just storing switches. Speaking of which, the switch storage section is down here. As you can see, there are 10 slots for switches, and before going on, one thing I'm going to note is one of the things that this thing was derided for by a lot of people, as far as I know, is that it can only hold 10 switches, whereas there are a total of 40 switches. And even then, the one in the show actually holds 18, but here's where I make my point. As far as this goes, I don't really think that this is so much a case for simply storing switches as it is for carrying them around, taking a bunch of switches from one place to another. Basically, with these things, it's better to put them in something like this than to, say, stuff a bunch in your pockets. And the thing is, this is designed for little kids. I think for little kids, being able to take around 10 switches is a pretty good thing. So, speaking of the switch storage, the way it works is that there is this foam insert on top, but the actual switch storage sockets are actual indents in the plastic. And each one also has a little clip, so that when you put in a switch, it stays securely in place. Even turning it upside down, the switch won't fall out. What this means is that with switches stored in here, they won't be rattling around and bumping into each other. So, since I do have at least in switches, I can give you an example of what an array of switches stored in there would look like. So, starting off with the 4 switches from the Forza driver, we can put them in these sockets right here. And as can be seen, any switch shape will fit in any socket. Then I have switches 5, 6, and 7. As well as the switch included. And finally I've got Elec and Fire. This can go up here. And so there you have an example array of switches that can be stored in. The spacing is perfectly even. When you have a display of 10, it looks very nice, as it shows the various shapes, colors, and switches, well, activation switches, that Astro switches have to offer. There are a couple of restrictions, though. Well, really only one major restriction, in that the fire switch can't fit in, well, it can fit here, but as you can see, the ring is right up against here, so you can't close it like that. So the fire switch can be stored in any of these except for these two. Another restriction is that any switch larger than the normal switch size, like say the Rocket Switch Super 1, while they can be plugged in, you won't be able to close this. And as you can see, it just closes like that. Another nice thing about this is that the actual hinge for it is on a ratchet, so that it's not loose. You can actually have it up like this. You don't have to pull it all the way back. And really, like I said, this is for carrying switches around, so all things here, you wouldn't really need to put the 4 switches from the Forza driver in here, because you can just store those in the Forza driver. But for some other switches, like say if you want to, if you want to take some switches around with you, this is a good thing to have, as you can take 10 switches, you can put 10 switches in here and then carry them from place to place. So this is really a pretty convenient thing. And like I said, the array of switches that you can get out of it looks nice. But before I finish this up, there is also one more feature that this has. So flipping this over, getting back to this side. Now, I said I would get back to this section right here later, so this is what I'm going to now. So what you can do with this is take this and open it up, and so now what you have is a display stand for the Forza Module Chain Series figures, as can be seen here. One option you have is to place a figure in this center circle. Another option is to use these pegs to display the figure. But one thing I'll say is that the pegs are rather small, and interestingly, they don't work too well. I mean, as far as my experience goes, trying to plug a figure into the peg holes is just tough. It's just tough, and they don't stay on the pegs too well. So really, if you're going to use it as a display stand, I definitely most recommend using the center circle. I mean, you could try using the pegs, but another thing about it is that it's kind of cluttered up here. So, you've got this part, and a lot of things for the feet to kind of bump into. And it seems like you'd probably have to turn the feet at odd angles to really get the figure to fit onto any of these 4 sets of 2 pegs. And besides that, this center circle is, a very nice shiny green. It makes for a nice looking display stand. And it's just, and this is kind of a bonus thing, but still pretty nice. And yeah, that's the phone. Just gonna wait for it to stop. Yeah, I apologize for this very much. I very much apologize. Okay. So yeah, there's that. And once again, I do apologize for having the phone ring in the middle of the review, but that wasn't something I could really control. Anyway, just once again showing the display of switches. Overall, this is a pretty nice toy. Like I said, if you think of it as, there are 2 ways to think of it. The way a lot of people have been thinking of it is as a storage container, and in that way it kind of fails because it only holds 10 switches, and there are a lot more than that. But if you think of it as a container for taking switches from one place to another, as a way of making them more easily transportable, then it's definitely a good toy. It's really nice that the switches are actually secured in place, and so that they won't fall out or shake around in there. So that means that whatever switches are stored in here are stored securely. And it's also pretty nice that it has all that detail on it, as well as the display stand on the underside. Though it's a bonus, it still does look very nice. And of course it does come with the wind switch, but if you only want the wind switch, then I'd say, if you want, let me start again. If you want the wind switch but don't want to buy this, then just go for the Kaban version. If you want to get the deluxe version with the shiny sticker, then you'd have to get this. But if you don't care about that, then you can go ahead and get the Kaban or the candy toy version. Still, for those who want a nice way to carry around switches that looks nice also for display purposes, or even those who want a version of this, because really this is the only actual version of this particular item that's available on the market, even though it is a little bit smaller than the one on the show. This is quite recommended. So, thanks for watching. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more videos. And for now, this is KRX50, writing off.